Hello. Okay, so hey guys, welcome to my first class. It's me, Swastika, and in this class today, we would be discussing the topic called the Indian Constitution. So we know that this channel is called Let's Crack CBSE, and without any further ado, let's get to it. So guys, before I get down to it, because I'm new here, I'll just tell you a little about myself. So I have done my master's in political science from Jawaharlal Nehru University. I have done my BA honors in political science from Delhi University. I am very passionate about teaching and I'm here to learn and unlearn with you. So basically, what I'm going to be doing with you guys is that I am going to teach you social sciences for class 8. So I'm going to teach you everything from history to political science to even geography. But we are going to start off with political science because that happens to be my favorite subject. Okay, so guys, but before I get down to it, let me just tell you a little about the platform and what we are giving you. So basically, this is India's largest learning platform, which is Unacademy, and the channel name is obviously called Crack CBSE. So basically, guys, if you take the Unacademy subscription, you will get a lot of benefits. So one of the few benefits that you are going to get in case you take our subscription is that we are going to have daily live classes with you. So this basically means that you can chat with your educator, you can engage with him in discussions, you can ask all your doubts and answer polls all the while the class is going on. So these are certain benefits that only people with if you take the plus, if you take the Unacademy subscription, that you will get. We will also give you live tests and quizzes, but the most important and the most fun thing that I found about this subscription, in case you choose to go in for it, which you must, is that you will be in a very democratic sphere. So what does this democracy mean? So we know that India is a very democratic country, but in on Unacademy it's doubly so, because the educators, because the students actually have the authority and the rights to pick their own educators at their preferred timings from their preferred devices, instead of it being the other way around. So generally क्या होता है ना कि educator picks the time and your teachers pick the class and pick the device and everything, but on Unacademy, because it's super democratic, we are going to make sure that students have the benefit and the option and the freedom of actually choosing their favorite educators. Lastly, we are going to have structured courses. So this is very important. So what happens is that on channels like YouTube, and this is the primary difference between YouTube and Unacademy. So on channels like YouTube, what happens is that there are random videos everywhere with a lot of advertisements and interventions. So the flow of the study gets disturbed. But what happens on Unacademy is that we give you a very structured, comprehensive course. So if it is for class 8, then somebody has sat down, has figured out the entire course and has planned everything accordingly for you. So it's going to be extremely comprehensive, well structured, well planned out, and it's an institution that is meant solely for the purpose of studying. That means that there are going to be no advertisements and it's not going to get annoying. So guys, these were some of the few benefits of taking an Unacademy subscription, and let me tell you a little more. So basically the top educators from Unacademy would be teaching you, and they're obviously all gold medalists in their field, so you know you are in good hands and everything. So for example, we will have teachers who are teaching you, who have had a teaching experience of over 20 years and who are absolutely the greatest educators in India in their field. Lastly, as I have already stated, for class 8, we would be covering the syllabus in a very comprehensive manner. That means that mathematics is going to be there, science is going to be there, English is going to be there, social science is going to be there, Hindi is going to be there. So I am going to basically be taking social sciences for you all. I hope that is understood. Okay, so now what do you have to do in order to become a part of this very great platform? क्या करना है? बस ऐप स्टोर पे जाना है, अनअकैडमी लर्निंग ऐप को क्लिक करना है और ये हरे वाले बटन पे जो है ना, वो जोर से दबाना है, जो इंस्टॉल बटन है, ठीक है। तो उसके बाद आपकी जो है ना ये ऐप इंस्टॉल हो जाएगी। Not happening. And once you are done installing the app, you will have the option of choosing your subscription plan. So guys, what I would say is that never go in for a 1 month or a 6 month thing, because that is not going to be beneficial at all. What I would recommend to you would be to go in for a 12 month or a 24 month subscription, because A, it is going to be economical, and B, because it's going to help you more in terms of studying in a structured manner. So ये economical का क्या मतलब हुआ? Economical का मतलब ये हुआ कि you will only be paying 1,250 rupees for a month, and you would be learning, 5 subjects, and that payment is hardly anything. If you go in for a 1 month, it's going to be almost double, and it's going to be 2,500 bucks for a month. So guys, if you go in for a 24 month, it's going to be even lesser. It's going to be 1,000 rupees for a month. So, but what I would say is that if you want to take the subscription, then you have to absolutely take my code. My code, I'll write it down here also, is SWAS, SWAS10. So what basically happens is that as soon as you put my code, as soon as you put my referral code, you will instantly get a 10% off. So what if a 2 year subscription was for 25,000, as soon as you put my code, which is SWAS1010, you will get the course for 22,500. Similarly, if you take it for 12 months, then if the course was initially for 15,000, you would get it for 13,500. So basically 24-month thing would be even lesser than 1,000 bucks per month for 5 subjects, which is super economical. And also they are going to teach you in a manner ki it's going to be structured, so it's going to be structured according to the duration of the course that you have opted for. So definitely go in for it. And okay, so let's begin. So as I have already told you that I will be discussing this one chapter, the first chapter in civics for class 8. So what I basically thought was that, before we get down into the nitty gritties of what the Indian constitution is and all of that stuff, I thought let's start with something easier and something more fun. Because when we will be covering the chapter, right, when we would be going through class 8, then we would be covering the chapter, a lot of words, new words will come, which you will get confused about if you have not sort of been explained prior that what exactly are they, right? So the first thing is going to be arbitrary. So this word basically means that when nothing is fixed and instead left to one's judgment or choice. This can be used to refer to rules that are not fixed. So arbitrary basically means that rules that are not fixed. मतलब इसका हिंदी में अगर इफ आई से देन इट जस्ट मींस कि रूल्स जो है वो फिक्स्ड नहीं है एंड आर्बिटरीली हो रहे हैं, मतलब इट्स आपकी जजमेंट है, आपकी चॉइस है, इट्स कंप्लीटली एन आर्बिटरी डिसीजन. The second word that we are going to discuss is going to be ideal. So this basically means a goal or a principle in its most excellent and perfect form. So ideal basically is a goal or a principle in its most perfect form. Polity means a society that has an organized political structure. Indian national movement emerged in the 19th century India and saw thousands of men and women coming together to fight the British rule. This culminated in India's independence in 1947. तो ये तो हमें पता ही है गाइस, हमें पता है कि इंडिया में फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल हुई थी क्योंकि ब्रिटिशर्स ने कब्जा कर लिया था इंडिया पे, एंड इन ऑर्डर टू गेट रिड ऑफ दोज पीपल वी हैड टू put up a fight, we had to struggle, and that movement was basically called Indian National Movement, and emerge हुई थी वो 19th century में. एंड इस टू गेट रिड ऑफ ब्रिटिशर्स बहुत सारे लोग इकट्ठे होके आए थे और उनने ब्रिटिश रूल के अगेंस्ट फाइट करा था. तो इंडिया it culminated in India's independence in 1947. Sovereign obviously in this chapter would mean independent people. Okay, so another important word would be human trafficking. Human trafficking basically है मतलब the practice of illegal buying and selling of different commodities across national borders. In the context of fundamental rights discussed in this chapter, it refers to illegal trade in human beings, particularly women and children. So human trafficking मतलब कि illegal trade है. इलीगल ट्रेड ऑफ ह्यूमन बींग्स तो ह्यूमन बींग्स को गलत तरीके से ट्रेड करा जा रहा है स्पेशली वुमेन एंड चिल्ड्रन बिकॉज दे आर कंसिडर्ड द वीकर section. Tyranny is basically means cruel and unjust use of power and authority. So basically guys, I discussed this pehle because all of these words are going to constantly keep getting rotated in this chapter. Okay, so when I come across these words again, I will explain them again, but I just wanted to give you a brief idea. Okay, so let's start off with the first chapter. So what I will basically be doing is that we would be discussing the entire chapter in great detail, and after that we would also be solving the back ka exercises. Okay, so we'll be discussing almost everything today. So stay tuned and let's begin. So guys, okay, so what happens is that if you are in a classroom and if you are a student, and let's say that you are a bunch of 40 students and 15 of you decide or 20 of you decide कि आज हमारा फिजिकल एजुकेशन का पीरियड है एंड हम लोग जो है ना वो फुटबॉल खेलेंगे. So you guys make a uniform class decision that today we are going to play football with our friends, and then you guys go to the field. ठीक है. But then suddenly a rowdy bunch of students from another class comes and they start playing football with their hands like they play basketball. So this would basically be very bad because this would mean that nobody is actually listening to the certain rules of the football field. So when we play football, we have to kick the ball with our feet, right? But those students, the rowdy bunch of students from the neighboring class came and they started playing basketball with the football. So they basically disobeyed certain rules, right? And because of that, there was complete chaos and nobody could actually play football. I'll give you another example. So what happens is that you are basically, your dad is driving you to school and there are these traffic lights, red, green, red, yellow, green, right? And so basically you're driving, you're going straight, there's green light, but then suddenly somebody from the opposite direction ignores the traffic lights and he cuts across you. Okay, so if he does that, if he basically cuts across you and ignores the traffic signals, there is going to be complete chaos and complete mayhem on the street. I'm saying that because he wouldn't know whether to go straight or to go left or to go right, and then there can be accidents and there can be chaos. So guys, how do we avoid a situation of chaos and mayhem? Football field mein, if we have an umpire who is setting the rules of the game and who is saying that you can't play football with your hands, then there would be certain rules, right? And on the road, if there are traffic lights which dictate that red means stop, green means go, and if everyone listens to those traffic lights, then there would be no accidents and no chaos. So guys, similarly, in a society there is a constitution, in the state there is a constitution, which is basically a written legal document where that contains rules that help define a society in its orderly functioning. I'll repeat this again. A constitution is a written legal document which contains rules that help define a society and help in its orderly functioning. So some of the questions that we are basically going to cover in this topic is that, why do we need a constitution? Who wrote the constitution for us and how did it get written? So these 3-4 things we would be pondering upon in this chapter and we would answer these questions in a great detail. तो हमें अभी तक ये तो समझ आ ही गया है ना guys कि constitution basically एक written लीगल डॉक्यूमेंट होता है जिसमें रूल्स होते हैं जो एक सोसाइटी को डिफाइन करने के में उसकी हेल्प करता है एंड उसकी ऑर्डरली फंक्शनिंग में हेल्प करता है। बिल्कुल जैसे फुटबॉल फील्ड में एक अंपायर रूल सेट करता है या जो रोड्स होती है उनमें ट्रैफिक लाइट्स होती हैं, वैसे ही स्टेट सोसाइटी के लिए एक कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन होता है जो आपको बताता है कि सही क्या है गलत क्या है। ये एक रिटन लीगल डॉक्यूमेंट होता है। So then, obviously, the first question arises that why do we even need it? Why do we need these rules? So from the previous examples, when we were discussing the football field and the traffic lights, we saw that, if there are no rules, there will be chaos. Okay, so almost similar reasons हैं. We need a constitution because it lays down ideals. So ideals हमने discuss करा था first slide में. इस word का मतलब है कि something that is in its perfect form, a principle in its perfect form. So basically the constitution tells us the fundamental nature of a society. So हमारी जो society है ना, उसका एकदम epitome, उसका जो best version हो सकता है वो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बताता है और उसी के द्वारा वो हमें उसका एक फंडामेंटल नेचर बताता है। ठीक है। सेकेंडली, द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन हेल्प्स serve as a set of rules and principles that all persons in a country can agree upon for governance of their country. Okay, so again, let me go back to the football field wala example. So if the umpire has set certain rules for playing football, then it is because everyone, all the like 15 players or how many players there are, have agreed and have given their consent to it. So because all of them have consented to the rules set, that is why it is going to be a game. So constitution also does a similar thing where they help serve as a set of rules and principles that all persons in a country can agree upon for the governance of their country. So all the rules are, so this basically means that all the people of the country have given their consent कि हम agree करते हैं, we abide and stand by the constitution and the ideals that it enshrines. So what other thing it does is that it defines the nature of a political system. In this, we will be discussing the case of Nepal in the next few slides. What else does it do? A constitution lays down rules to guard us from the misuse of authority by our political leaders. So what does this mean, guys? This basically means that, okay, I'll give you an example. So imagine that you are a class of 40 students and the teacher says that she has to go out for the period because some important thing came up, and because she is absent from the class, she appoints a class monitor to look after everyone, to look after all the 39 students. Okay, and then she leaves. So but this class monitor isn't a very good person and he wrongly accuses person A of something the person didn't do. So this is wrong on the part of the class monitor. So basically the authority of the class monitor comes from the teacher, but the class monitor misuses it on his friends, on his class students. So to prevent a situation where this misuse of authority happens, the constitution is going to lay down rules to guard us from the misuse of authority by our political leaders. In such a manner, the constitution also saves us from ourselves. How does a constitution save us from ourselves? So guys, one reason for that. So for example, I am a student X and I have a biology paper tomorrow, which is going to be very tough. But I also have a favorite serial, a favorite cartoon that I love to watch at 7 o'clock. But I know that but then I have this option of making a choice that if I watch my favorite cartoon at 7 for 2 hours, then my paper will not go well because I did not study for it that well. Right? But if I sit down and if I study, then my paper is going to go well. So then what do you think is the right decision to make? So obviously the right decision to make would be to study for 2 hours and to, like, not listen to yourself and not give in to the temptation of actually watching the serial. So in such a manner, the constitution also saves us from ourselves. Okay, so the next thing is that every society is prone to the tyranny of the majority. अब तो ये बहुत ही confusing लग रहा होगा कि ये tyranny of the majority क्या है. But again, guys, in the first slide we had discussed what tyranny means. So this basically means absolute authority. But what does this term majority mean? So what happens is, guys, so for example, majority, I'll explain to you, and minority, what it means. So we are a class of 40 students and 30 of us are boys, and so obviously 10 of us are going to be girls. ठीक है, तो मेजॉरिटी का बेसिकली मतलब ये है कि जिसका न्यूमेरिकल नंबर जो है ना वो बड़ा है. 40 में से 30 लड़के हैं और 10 लड़कियां हैं, है ना. तो बड़ा नंबर तो 30 लड़कों का हुआ ना. तो इसका मतलब कि 30 लड़के जो हैं वो मेजॉरिटी में हैं एंड जो 10 लड़कियां हैं वो माइनॉरिटी में है. अब इसका एक और एग्जांपल हम देख सकते हैं कि जैसे इंडिया में जो है मुस्लिम्स लेट्स से 10% है, तो हिंदूज जो हैं वो ऑब्वियसली 100 माइनस 10 मतलब 90% होंगे. तो जो मेजॉरिटी है वो हिंदूज की है हिंदुस्तान में एंड मुस्लिम्स जो हैं वो एक माइनॉरिटी में है. तो क्या होता है गाइस कि जैसे ये नंबर बड़ा होता है ना, अगर 90% हिंदूज है या 30% बॉयज हैं, देन what happens is that the majority wants their way with everything and anything. So what if I take this example and if I take it forward and if I say that, again we had a physical education class in which everyone decided that we will go outside and we will play, but the 30 boys wanted to play cricket and the 10 girls wanted to play basketball. तो अगर ये मेजोरिटेरियन व्यू प्रिवेल करे, मेजोरिटेरियन व्यू मतलब कि हम मेजोरिटी की बात सुने और माइनॉरिटी को इग्नोर करें, तो क्या होगा कि 40 के 40 लोगों को जो है वो क्रिकेट खेलना पड़ेगा क्योंकि मेजोरिटी मतलब 30 लड़कों को क्रिकेट खेलना है. तो जो 10 लड़कियां हैं उनकी बात को तो हम कंसिडर ही नहीं करेंगे क्योंकि वो एक न्यूमेरिकल माइनॉरिटी में है. तो क्या होगा दैट दिस इज व्हाट इज द टिरनी, that absolute authority, because we are in a majority. So but our constitution actually safeguards minority rights, and they do so in particular by saying that, minority rights have also to be given due consideration. Just because there is 90% Hindus in Hindustan and 10% Muslims doesn't mean that Muslims fundamental human rights will get ignored. So the constitution basically safeguards us from such a situation. So again, we had said in the previous slide that we will discuss the case of Nepal in terms of defining a political system. And now, so we had basically discussed it. So basically in 1990, in Nepal's previous constitution, we had a monarchy. मोनार्की मतलब कि एक किंग था नेपाल में एंड दिस किंग यूज्ड टू rule over the kingdom of Nepal. So it was a monarchy because there was one king who was ruling over Nepal, and this was according to the previous constitution of 1990. But then a people's movement in Nepal fought till 2006 to put the powers of the king to an end. And this struggled for over 12 years. And in 2007, an interim constitution was adopted. So basically they're saying कि 1990 में जो है एक प्रीवियस कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन था, एक किंग था, बट नेपाल के लोगों ने बहुत ज्यादा फाइट करा, उनने एक मूवमेंट चलाई, जो मूवमेंट जो है 12 साल चली, 12 साल स्ट्रगल हुआ एंड उसके बाद जो है किंग की पावर्स जो है they came to an end, and in 2007 an interim constitution was also adopted. Okay, so guys, if you open the last page of your NCERT book, you will see कि जो back वाली exercises है उसमें question number 2 में you will see that that they have mentioned the article. So I'll just read it out, which is basically that 1990 Constitution of Nepal, Part 7 Executive, Article number 35 states the executive power. The executive power of the Kingdom of Nepal shall be vested in his majority and the Council of Ministers. But in 2007, with the interim constitution, Article 37 stated that the executive power of Nepal shall be vested in the Council of Ministers. So basically, king को उन लोगों ने उठा के कर दिया change. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing. The next thing is going to be us understanding a little bit of history. So basically, guys, okay, so the second question that we wanted to address was that who wrote the constitution, how was it made, and so on and so forth. So in 1934, the Indian National Congress demanded a constituent assembly. During World War II, an assertion for an independent constituent assembly gained momentum, and this was convened in December 1946. So from December 1946 to November 1949, the Constituent Assembly drafted a constitution for the independent India. So whenever somebody asks you that who wrote the constitution, was it a single person, was it multiple people? So the answer for that is the Constituent Assembly drafted a constitution for the independent India by sitting between December 1946 to November 1949. ठीक है. एंड जो डिमांड इस कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली की सबसे पहले रेज हुई थी, दैट वाज इन 1944 बाय अ डिमांड रेज्ड बाय द इंडियन नेशनल कांग्रेस. बट दिस इज व्हाट वी हैव टू रिमेंबर. Keep in mind that it was the Constituent Assembly which basically drafted the constitution for us. Okay, so this Constituent Assembly basically had a group of over 300 people who struggled with the concerns of diversity, unity, socio-economic reform, and representation. So guys, okay, so whenever we think about India, हिंदुस्तान के बारे में हम जब भी सोचते हैं तो हमें क्या सबसे पहले नजर आता है? हमें नजर आता है कि हम एक बहुत ही डाइवर्स नेशन है. और हम लोग डाइवर्स इसलिए हैं बिकॉज नॉर्थ part of India is going to be speaking in a completely different language. They're going to be wearing different clothes. They may even be of different religion, different caste. And the south part of India would again have a different identity of their own, and they would also be wearing different clothes, different religions, following different religions, speaking different languages. So we as a nation are very, very diverse because we constitute a lot of different languages and religions and castes and so on and so forth. So when our constitution was being drafted with the Constituent Assembly, we faced a lot of challenges. Because we were very diverse. So how do you get all these people together who differ in their languages, who differ in terms of their religion, who are different in terms of their caste? How do we come to a consensus where all of these people agree? So guys, that task was very difficult, and so we had a lot of debates in the Constituent Assembly, which popularly began to be called as Constituent Assembly debates. So after extensive debates and extensive discussions, we actually agreed upon a constitution. Another one of the reasons that we have to understand, and this is another one of the difficulties that we faced at the time of independence, was that India was divided into different princely states. Princely states just means कि जो इंडिया है, ये भारत है, यहाँ पे बहुत सारी states थी जिनमें princes rule कर रहे थे कई कई पीढ़ियों से. ठीक है. So अब the issue arises that if all of these princes have been there for like so long, then what do we do to actually make them leave their princely states, and for them to actually surrender that and to agree to a constitution? So even that task asking the princes to give up their princely states and to accept a constitution which, okay, so the power of the constitution also emanates from the people, so they had to give up their power, right? And that also was very difficult. The third reason was a very, very bloody battle. A lot of blood was spilled from both the sides at the hands of the British rule, and because of that we also faced a lot of issues. Okay, so the last reason that I'm going to discuss is going to be poverty. So these are basically some of the challenges that we were facing while we were drafting the constitution. So what happened was, guys, that when just they basically left us, we understood that we inherited a very poor state. So what is this very, why did we inherit a very poor state? Why was India poor? We were poor because the Britishers ruthlessly exploited us economically. So there is a theory coined by Dada Bhai Nairoji, who basically calls it the drain theory, and he says that, the Britishers, they came, this is British, this is India, and they took everything from us. They took our jute, they took our cotton. इंडिया को जो है एक सोने की चिड़िया बुलाते थे, है ना? We were a very India was a country that was very rich in resources from us. So, by economically exploiting us and due to the economic exploitation that we faced at their hands, India was basically at the time of independence extremely poor. So, when we were writing the constitution, we also had to understand that all these socio-economic challenges were there, and we had to understand and we had to figure out ways in which we could develop and ways in which we could not be so poor. Okay, so I hope that is clear. So now we are going to talk about the key features of our constitution. Okay, so basically we know that we've listed some of the problems that we faced, socioeconomic problems, we had concerns of diversity, representation, so on and so forth. So, and from that challenging situation, we had to transform into a united, strong, democratic society. So, how could we do it? We could only do it if there were certain features that we inculcated in our constitution. So, these are the key features. The first one is going to be federalism. Okay, so federalism in very simple word means that there is going to be more than one level of government. Why do we need more than one level of government in India? That is because, guys, India has a lot of different people. Okay, and a lot of these different people live in villages, some of them live in cities, some of them live in, so on and so forth, right? So it is impossible for only one central government to actually govern all of them and to look after their needs. So we came up with a very smart idea, and we said that like only one government can't actually take care of so many people, so let's have multiple or more than one level of government. And then we came up with these three tiers. This was center, state, and the local government, which is basically panchayati raj and municipal corporations. So each state enjoys autonomy in exercising powers on certain issues. So we understand that तीन level होंगे, एक सेंटर होगा, एक स्टेट लेवल होगा, एक लोकल लेवल होगा, ठीक है? एंड ये तीन अपने अपने ज्यूरिसडिक्शन में जो है वो टेक केयर करेंगे, ठीक है? तीन लेवल्स होंगे. And every state enjoys autonomy in exercising powers on certain issues. The subjects of national concern require that all of these states follow laws of the central government. So basically, it's like there are going to be different lists, right? So there's going to be the union list, there is going to be the state list, so, and there's going to be the concurrent list. So the subjects that are under the union list would be the subjects that are covered by the central government. So this would basically mean things like union is going to cover things like defense or atomic energy and so on and so forth, whereas the state list is probably going to, which is going to be concerned with state welfare, is going to cover things like health, sanitation, so on and so forth. So it's different for each and every tier. The constitution also contains lists that detail issues in each tier of the government. So we have discussed ये list की बात हम कर रहे थे कि क्या, but also in India, if a dispute arises between the state and the center, then the preference is generally given to the center. The constitution also specifies money that each tier of the government gets for the work it does. Okay, so the next thing that we are going to discuss is that we in India have a parliamentary form of government. What does this parliamentary form of government? This basically means that our representatives are basically elected by the people. Isko some people confuse it and put it in like fancy words, but guys, parliamentary form of government का बहुत simple सरल भाषा में सिर्फ यही मतलब है कि जो representatives है ना, वो लोगों ने elect कर रहे हैं directly. So people of India are playing a direct role in electing the representatives. हमें तो पता ही है कि जो भारत का संविधान है उसकी जो पावर है वो एमिनेट करती है लोगों से. Our constitution, as Abraham Lincoln has rightly pointed out, is by the people, of the people, and for the people, right? So the power of the constitution emanates from the people, and we have a parliamentary form of government, which basically in very simple words means that the representatives are elected by the people, and these people of India are then playing a direct role in the election of these representatives. So every citizen, despite of his social background, we don't care what his religion is, what his caste is, what his class is, and so on and so forth, despite all of those social differences, each and every citizen can actually contest elections. Okay, so the third feature that we are going to talk about is going to be separation of powers. So what do we understand by separation of powers? So guys, in India we have three main organs. ठीक है, तीन organs है इंडिया में. एक है legislature, एक है executive, एक है judiciary. So again, this is a very important point. You have to understand it very well, very properly, very thoroughly, because it is super important. So these three organs act in different ways. The legislature basically refers to our elected representatives. So legislature basically elected representatives को करता है. Executive is going to be a smaller group of people who are responsible for implementing laws and running the government. So executive is going to basically be एक छोटा group of people जो implement करते हैं guys laws को. Laws बनते हैं legislature में, उनकी जो implementation होती है वो होती है executive में, and judiciary is basically a system of courts. Okay, which is going to dictate whether it's right. So we have Supreme Courts, we have one Supreme Court, and we have several High Courts, and so on and so forth. So this is basically a system of courts. So guys, the three organs work in such a manner that they keep checks and balances on each other. वो एक दूसरे को जो है ना वो इस तरह से होते हैं कि वो एक दूसरे को जो है ना वो एकदम check and balance करके रखते हैं ताकि authority and जो power है ना वो misuse ना हो. So, for example, the executive one day decides that I want to throw a nuclear bomb somewhere, then obviously there would be intervention. Or let's say the executive decides that, I want complete dictatorship, then the judiciary would not allow this to happen. So, ये एक दूसरे को cross cut करते हैं, ठीक है? तो इस तरह से जो है ये checks and balances जो हैं वो maintain हो पाते हैं. And each organ is to exercise different powers. Okay, so I think this is clear. I think it's also relatively easy to understand. Okay, so the next and the most important thing that we are going to discuss is basically going to be fundamental rights. So, fundamental rights are often touted as the conscience of the constitution. This is the most important thing, and दिमाग में बिल्कुल रख के इसको घूमना है. ये जो है कॉन्शियंस होता है हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का. मतलब हम जो मोरली सही चीज है वो फंडामेंटल राइट्स में इंश्राइंड है. तो बेसिकली क्या होता है दैट इट प्रोटेक्ट सिटीजंस अगेंस्ट द आर्बिटरी एंड एब्सोल्यूट यूज ऑफ द पावर ऑफ द स्टेट. अब हमने बिगिनिंग में डिस्कस करा था आर्बिटरी का मतलब कि आप बिना किसी जजमेंट बिना किसी चॉइस के लिए कुछ भी डिसीजन बना दो और वो आप कर सकते हो क्योंकि आप पावर में हो, है ना. एंड एब्सोल्यूट का भी ये मतलब हुआ कि आपने जो बोला, इफ यू से समथिंग, if the executive one day says that I want to kill off 10 million people or something along the lines of what Hitler did in Germany, then they will have to do it. But a constitution will actually prevent and protect the citizens from such arbitrary actions of the use of power by the state. So what happened in Germany was when Hitler was there, na, he said you kill off all Jews. ठीक है. And then at that point of time there was no constitution to actually stop that from happening, and then there was a genocide that was carried out, है ना. So if a constitution is there, then the citizens would be protected against such arbitrary and absolute use of power by the state. So the constitution does two things for the individual. It basically guarantees the rights of individuals against individuals and also against the state. So this is a very interesting point. How does the constitution guarantee rights of individuals against individuals? That basically happens when for example if I'm person A and I say that I don't like this person and this person shouldn't exist, so he should not even be there. So then if I kill this person, then I would be violating the right to his life and I would be put in jail. ठीक है. So that is because the constitution is guaranteeing him a right to life. ठीक है. Similarly against the state, मतलब that one day if the state decides, गवर्नमेंट ने बोला कि अब हरियाणा में गुड़गांव में रहती हूँ, तो हरियाणा गवर्नमेंट ने बोला कि अब जो है ना पूरे गुड़गांव में जो है सिर्फ डीजल की गाड़ियां चलेंगी एंड बिल्कुल पल्यूट कर दो पूरे इन्वायरमेंट को. ठीक है. डीजल की गाड़ियां चला चला के. So then what is going to happen? Then I would say that the state is putting my life in jeopardy by polluting the environment and hence is infringing my right to life. So in such a manner, the constitution would actually be protecting me and it would be guaranteeing me rights against the state and the individual. So I think this is sort of understood. Okay, so let's move on. So guys, B.R. Ambedkar on fundamental rights, super important. Just keep it in mind when you are doing it, and let's understand. So basically, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was the father of our constitution and he helped schedule castes a lot. One of his famous books is called The Annihilation of Caste, in which he exposed the logic of caste domination. So the objective of fundamental rights was very simple, that every citizen must be in a position to claim those rights and that these rights must be binding upon every authority that has the power to make new laws. So I'll repeat this again, that the every citizen every citizen must be in a position to claim those rights and these rights must be binding upon every citizen. Okay, so hmm. Okay, so we have a lot of fundamental rights. We have basically, I'll just quickly go over with them with you. So we have right to equality, we have right to freedom, we have right against exploitation, we have right to freedom of religion. We also have cultural and educational rights and rights to constitutional remedies. Okay, so guys, I'll quickly be going over the rights and I'll tell you what exactly they are. So, the right to equality basically means that all persons are equal before the law. This means that all persons shall be equally protected by the laws of the country. The right to freedom is basically means that the right to freedom of speech and expression and the right to form associations, the right to move freely and the right to reside in any part of the country and to practice any profession, occupation or business. This is right to freedom. Right against exploitation basically means that the constitution prohibits human trafficking, forced labor and children working under 14 years of age. Right to freedom of religion means that religious freedom is provided to all citizens. Every person has the right to practice, profess, and propagate the religion of their choice. Cultural and educational rights basically mean that the Constitution states that all minorities, religious or linguistic, can set up their educational institutions in order to preserve and develop their own culture. Right to constitutional remedies basically means that it allows citizens to move the court if they believe that any of their fundamental rights have been violated by the state. So again, I will explain this to you in very easy language. Right to equality, बहुत ही simple meaning इसका ये है that all persons are equal before law. ठीक है, मतलब कि किसी को भी आप कास्ट, सेक्स या रिलीजन के बेसिस पे जो है आप उसके अगेंस्ट जो है वो डिस्क्रिमिनेट नहीं कर सकते. And every person will also have access to all public places including playgrounds, hotels, shops, so on and so forth. The state cannot discriminate against anyone in matters of employment and the practice of untouchability has also been abolished. So earlier we used to have like untouchability where we were like we don't touch people of a certain caste, but then this also has been abolished by the constitution. Similarly, we also have a right to freedom, which basically means that I can form associations, I can move freely, and I can also reside in any part of the country. So I have all these freedoms. There is a right against exploitation, which says that human trafficking, forced labor, children working under the age of 14 years, all of this is also प्रोहिबिटेड. ठीक है, हमने इनिशियली डिस्कस करा था ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग क्या होता है. ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग मतलब कि आप इंसान को बेच रहे हो, स्पेशली प्रेवलेंट होता है ये वुमेन एंड चिल्ड्रन के लिए, तो ये गलत है, ये हम नहीं कर सकते. The next we are going to talk about is freedom of religion. Freedom of religion basically मतलब ये सबको होता है and इसका एक बहुत ही basic meaning ये है कि anyone and anyone can profess, propagate and practice his religion or culture. So if you're living in Hindustan, you can be a Christian and you can do that because you have the freedom to actually pick your religion, to practice it and to also preach it. Then moving on, we have cultural and educational rights. So the constitution states that all minorities, religious or linguistic, can set up their educational institutions in order to preserve and develop their own culture. तो ठीक है, कल्चरल एंड एजुकेशनल राइट्स का मतलब फिर यही हुआ कि आप जो हो, यू कैन सेट अप इंस्टीट्यूशंस एंड स्कूल्स एंड सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ टू प्रिजर्व एंड डेवलप योर ओन कल्चर एंड नोबडी कैन स्टॉप यू फ्रॉम डूइंग सो. सिमिलरली वी हैव अ राइट टू कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल रेमेडीज. मतलब इफ योर फंडामेंटल राइट्स, हमने पिछले स्लाइड में डिस्कस करा था ना फंडामेंटल राइट क्या होता है. सो अगर आपकी फंडामेंटल राइट जैसे किसी का राइट टू लाइफ वायलेट हो जाए तो मैं रिट पेटिशन फाइल कर सकती हूँ सुप्रीम कोर्ट में अंडर आर्टिकल 32 कि मेरा जो राइट टू लाइफ है वो वायलेट हो गया, आप कुछ करो, कुछ देखो इसमें और मेरे को बताओ कि क्या करना है क्या नहीं करना, ठीक है? सो आई कैन डू ऑल ऑफ दैट. The last thing and the last feature we are going to talk about. So also guys, if you have doubts, then please just like mention it in the chat. I think somebody has a doubt. I can see your messages, but yeah, I can see your messages. So just you can type down your doubts below. So secularism basically means that the state does not promote one religion as the official religion. The state does not promote one religion as the official religion. So this basically also means that, you know, if you're living in Hindustan, if it so that doesn't mean that only Hindus are going to live here, or that being a Hindu is the official religion of the state. That is as far from the truth as it gets. Anyone and anyone can live here, practice, profess, do whatever they want, and the state will have no right to intervene in their like that. So we don't have any official religion in India, and that is basically the, and we would be discussing this in more detail. Secularism is going to be the chapter number 2. So the next class is going to be completely dedicated to that. Okay. Uh let's have back exercises. Let's go through that because the chapter is almost done. Guys, okay, somebody is asking me that they have doubts, but like I can't see what doubts you have because you're not typing them. So if you have a doubt, then please do type. Okay, so let's start off with the back exercise. Why does a democratic country need a constitution? We have already discussed this, and the answer for this is, there are 4 points to this. Basically, basic ideals are mentioned on which citizens aspire to live. So these basic ideals are mentioned in the constitution, and that is the reason why a democratic country needs a constitution. The constitution also tells us the fundamental nature of society. मतलब fundamental nature क्या है society का, वो हमें ये सबसे पहले हमने first slide में discuss करा था, ये बिल्कुल वही answer है. थर्ड रीजन है कि वो नेचर ऑफ पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम एक कंट्री का डिफाइन करता है. एंड फोर्थ रीजन है दैट स्टेट्स अ सेट ऑफ रूल्स so different people can coexist. We know that in India it's a very diverse country. We have different people from all uh, parts, speaking all different languages, practicing different cultures and religions and so on and so forth. But people have to coexist, right? And that can only be done if a constitution is there. So the next one, the next is that look at the wordings of the two documents given below. The first column is from 1990 Nepal constitution. The second column is from the more recent interim constitution of Nepal. So 1990 वाले में Article 35 के under they stated that the executive power of the Kingdom of Nepal shall be vested in His Majesty and the Council of Ministers. ठीक है, ये 1990 वाले में था. और अभी जो 2007 वाला इसमें लिखा हुआ है आर्टिकल 37, उसमें दे said the executive power of Nepal shall be vested in the council of ministers. तो अब इन दोनों चीजों में क्या डिफरेंस है? The difference between the two is that in 1990 Nepal was a monarchy and the power was vested in the king. ठीक है, but when there was a people struggle in 2007, an interim constitution was adopted which then gave the executive authority to the people, because the people's movement prevailed. So this is basically the difference between the two things. Okay, so what is going to happen if there was no restriction on the power of elected representatives? Again, this is something that we have discussed. This is question number 3 from the back exercise, and the answer for this is that citizens are responsible for electing their leaders. The possibility of leaders misusing their authority and power for wrong reasons, therefore a constitution has to exist. So again, we have discussed that. Okay, so guys, let's make it interactive now, and let's ask you all only the fourth question. So the question at the back is that in each of the following situation, identify the minority. And why do you think are these the minorities? So in a school with 30 teachers, 20 are males. So who is going to be the minority? The minority, okay. So obviously, if in 30 teachers, 20 are males, then 10 are females. So 10 is obviously a lesser number than 20. So then the 10 females are going to be in minority. Similarly, in a city of 5%, there are 5% Buddhists. So then if there are 5% Buddhists, then that means that 95% people are of a different religion. ठीक है, तो 5% बुद्धिस्ट जो है वो माइनॉरिटी होंगे. In a factory mess for all employees, 80% are vegetarians. So if 80% are vegetarians, then 20% are going to be non-vegetarians, and so the lesser number is going to be the minority. In a class of 50 students, 40 belong to more well-off families. So then 10 people don't belong to well-off families, and those are going to be the minority. Okay. In the next one, we are seeing that the call. Okay, so basically we have to answer the significance of these things, these terms, and we have already discussed this in the chapter, so I will go through it very quickly. So why is federalism important in guys India? Federalism ka importance hi kya hai? So it is important in a country like India because there are people living at different levels, and only one level of government can't govern them. So we need governments at like different levels. So if the Panchayati Raj is responsible for governing the village, the state government is responsible for governing the state, and the central government is responsible for governing the entire country. Is this understood? I think it must be understood only because we discussed this. The next is separation of powers. There are three organs of governance: the legislature, executive and judiciary. Each हमने discuss करा था, legislature है, executive है, judiciary है, and each one of them have different functions, but they all keep checks on balances. So legislature basically elected representatives. Executive मतलब कि implement करना है laws को. Judiciary मतलब there is a system of courts which determine what is right, what is wrong. Fundamental rights की क्या importance है guys? Fundamental rights basically मतलब a set of rights that the constitution offers to every citizen of the country. These rights include right to freedom, right to equality, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and religious rights, right to constitutional remedies. These rights give every citizen of the country the right to be considered as an equal, to not get discriminated based on caste, culture or religion. The next is going to be parliamentary form of government, which basically means that you are going to have elected representatives which are being directly elected by the people. Okay, so guys, so the next one is we have to identify कि क्या है, what is the, I can't. Okay, so in this we have to identify, we have to color, we have to figure out where is India, where is Nepal and where is Bangladesh. So guys, we know ये अभी जो है ये नेपाल है, ये बांग्लादेश है, एंड ये बाकी सारा जो है वो इंडिया है. ठीक है, so this is also super easy. Nepal is going to be right here. Bangladesh is going to be the white thing, and the rest of it is just going to be India. So we had to identify that. Okay. So guys, if you have any doubts, you can ask me. I am open to doubts now because I think I'm mostly done teaching the content. Okay, so there are no doubts. Okay, so guys, okay, again, I would request you to take my code SWAS10, SWAS, and for you to get the Unacademy subscription. It's not very difficult and it's going to be very beneficial for you because A, it's going to be economical, and B, it is going to give you things in a very structured manner. So all your course is going to be comprehensively covered. It's going to be very nicely done, and it's also going to be super cheap, super economical. So definitely go put my code, get the Unacademy subscription, and that's going to be really, really amazing. And obviously, I've already explained the benefits of having an Unacademy subscription to you all. The primary of them being that we are going to have live classes where you get to interact with teachers on a live basis the way we are interacting right now. You also get the opportunity to basically pick your favorite educator. So if you take the Unacademy subscription, एक बहुत ज़्यादा डेमोक्रेटिक माहौल होगा। अनअकैडमी पे तो बहुत ही ज़्यादा डेमोक्रेटिक है, क्योंकि आप जो हो अपना फेवरेट एजुकेटर और अपने फेवरेट टाइम पे जो है उनको पिक कर सकते हो। So keeping all of that in mind, you should definitely go and take it. And of course, more benefits would mean that everything is getting covered in a comprehensive manner. If there are 5 subjects, so वो पांचों चीजों बहुत ही अच्छे से cover हो रही है. And जैसे advertisements and all you have on YouTube, so on Unacademy, it's an institution that is devoted completely to studies, right? So you're not even going to have issues with that. So what are you waiting for? Go get the subscription. And if you have any doubts, then I can take them.